Big man ting, smash the like button and subscribe. Now, as many of you know, the YB is a psychological Donny. He has a PhD in psychology. However, what many of you didn't know, he also has a PhD in physical education. So any of you uneducated Donnies out there, any of you LDBC low IQ Donnies out there, make sure you check into this class because I'm taking you to school on this one. So what do we know? Over the last, since your boy Wilder got his cheeks busted by the self-proclaimed pillow fists, everyone's been crying saying, oh man, Tyson Fury, he cheated, Tyson Fury glove, Tyson Fury hands, them same hands, which Wilder himself, which the LDBC themselves, which even the YB himself, them same hands who we laughed at that was slapping, have now become the focal central point of cheating. You man was laughing at Fury for slapping before. Them same slaps end up knocking your guy out smoothly, yeah? Sending him to Asgard, sending him to Nene Land. Listen, I ain't gonna lie, man. I've seen some dons off the mollies in the club, yeah, hitting that Nene, but I ain't seen no one hit that Nene like Wilder was hitting it. He was hitting it hard in that ring. I was like, what? Where's he learnt them moves from? Them moves was hard. And he was nay-naying all to the max. I thought he was going to hit that cat daddy, that Dougie next. That's what I was waiting for. But anyway, as I was saying, we've had a lot of man complaining about Fury's hand position. So we're going to take you on a bit of a physical education lesson here. What you see on your screen now is Deontay Wilder equally in a compromising hand position. And now, since you lot like to jump all over what Fury's so-called alleged cheating, let's jump all over Wilder's alleged cheating. What do we know? Look on your screen now. You see a picture. In physical education, when you learn about the physical body, when you learn about the frame, there's different terms for different movements. Now, the movement which Fury's been criticised for is extension of the wrist. Yeah, when the wrist extends and it looks like almost you're about to slap something. However, the inverse of extension is what we call flexion. And that's what you see Wilder's hand position in. So the point is, how is it, someone please explain to me, why is it we're able to see Wilder in a position in the ring, clearly flexing his wrist, but we can't see Fury extending his wrist? What's the difference here? This is how the body moves. The body can move in different ways. And I've said myself many times before, for all we know, we don't know this for sure, for all we know though, Fury may well be double jointed, in which case would mean his wrist movements may be even more pronounced. Which, is there any evidence for this? Well, like I've said many times before, again, we've heard from people in the cronk saying Fury has in particular struggled to understand, or he's struggled to implement some of their strategies, which is turning shots over. Now, if you've got double jointed people in general, they find coordination more difficult. Not to mention he's 6'9" as well and gangly, which is also, we know, a hindrance to coordination. Not to mention he's also spent 20 years doing something a particular way. 20-year habits are very hard to break, etc., etc. However, looking at the physiology of it, Wilder's as much a cheater as Fury is then, because look at the gloves, you can see them there. Oh look, that means that by your logic, this picture of Wilder showing his wrists clearly flexing, that must mean that his fist must be in the wrist place then, because there's no way his fist could fully be in the glove, could there? This picture here, by your logic, proves that Wilder also had his fist in the wrist department. Otherwise, how could it possibly stretch that far? It's impossible, like you said. Yeah? You man are saying it's impossible for Fury's wrist to extend that far. Well, I'm saying it's impossible for Wilder's wrist to equally extend. And try it yourself now. Try it now. Go forward and backwards with your wrist. It's more or less about the same. Yeah? Wrists roughly have an equal level of flexion and extension. More or less. So if you can justify why Wilder's wrist, and to be honest, I think Wilder's wrist here is more blatant, or is more bent than any of Fury's slaps were. And this is the point. Hands and wrists are malleable. Joints are malleable. Especially when put under pressure, especially when put under force, i.e. when Fury throws his shots and he touches Wilder, that creates resistance. When you throw a hook, especially if you're throwing it under poor technique, when you throw a hook and you land on your target, i.e. you hit resistance, that creates an opposing force kind of thing, which naturally pushes your hand into extension mode, doesn't it? If you stick your hand out now and push it against the wall, naturally it's going to make your hand extend. So don't be shocked when you see Fury's hand opened up on Wilder's face. It's not unless you're like Mike Tyson. What makes good hookers is the fact they throw their shots with their wrists with a strong level of flexion. That's what you almost call turnover. Turnover is essentially just flexion. Keeping your wrist in towards you and not out. That's the difference between a good hook and a bad hook, more or less. Keeping your fist pointing towards your body rather than out. But it comes down to a level of technique and preference. And the worst thing about this whole lot is that Wilder himself is known as a guy who slaps. He's known as a guy who hits people with his wrist. He hits people with the inside of his glove. In fact, I'm pretty sure Wilder's been warned before. He hits people on the back of their head with his wrist. This is what Wilder's renowned for. And I've heard you man justify it before, saying, "Oh man, well, it don't matter how it get done. It doesn't matter how the job gets done. He wild, but he knock people out. Who care? Who care how it happens? It doesn't matter." That's what you lot were saying. When Wilder goes mad and hits people, knocks people out with his wrist, you lot don't mind that. That's alright. It's funny. Oh man, yeah man, Wilder's wild. Who cares? That's what you lot, genuinely, that's what you man say. But when other people give it a go, when other people do whatever, all of a sudden there's a huge conspiracy. And I've always said I think it's less powerful anyway, to be honest. I've always said that if Wilder put some of that energy onto the end of his two index and middle finger knuckles, rather than putting it onto his wrist, same as Fury. And crazily enough, the shots you see from Fury in the second fight, the ones he turned over, they're the ones that ended up levelling Wilder. The reason the first fight he didn't do as much damage, in my opinion, was because his technique wasn't as good as it was in the second fight. There's clear pictures in the second fight of Fury hitting Wilder with semi-turned over hooks. And that's what did him in. That's what finished him off. Now Wilder he's more athletic, so he can get, like when he fought Fury in the first fight, he's slapping, he's just winging shots, but he's more athletic, he's more naturally explosive, so he gets away with it. Technique isn't as important to him. He's got them fast twitch muscles. Fury doesn't so much. However, Fury applied with a bit of technique, and that's why I've never believed in this whole punchers are born thing. Not really. You can be born as much as you like, or you can be an average puncher if you learn to punch properly. Like Paulie was always a slapper. Who knows, if he'd have actually spent some time thinking about technique, he might have actually done some damage in his career. And look at this. Fury's the best example for me. Fury, I've come out categorically and said Fury was, technically speaking, one of the worst punchers in terms of heavy punchers. In terms of technically trying to create power, Fury historically is one of the worst ones going. However, now in his last fight, he's getting there. He's making massive improvements. And lo and behold, he gets his first stoppage in years. Is it a coincidence? Don't tell me. Oh no, YB, it's not what you were saying about his technique. It's some other reason. Alright then. Anyway, the fact of the matter is, Wilder, Fury, they both do exactly the same thing. The difference is, when Wilder tried it in the first fight, he couldn't get the job done. When Fury did it in the second fight, he did get the job done, and you man are sour. Don't be complaining at one person for doing one thing, and then not complaining at another person for doing another thing. Not to mention, the picture on your screen for this whole video shows Wilder in an equally, exposing wrist position. His wrist position here is overexposed. How is that possible? His hand must also be in the wrist area. His gloves also must be tampered with then, surely. Which is it? Oh no, don't tell me. Oh no, it's only tampering. It's only tampering if a glove enables extension. You guys have lost your head completely.